What is going on, folks? Welcome to another edition of the TKO Show here on TKOTalk.com. I'm your host, Tim, and this is going to be one of the... I don't know how frequent it's going to be honest. One of the solo editions of the show, where I basically pick a topic or two or three or seven and talk about it to you guys, and you guys can let me know in the comments and via Twitter or however you want to interact with me. If you agree, disagree, if you think I'm stupid, if you think I'm ridiculous, if you agree, I already said that. Any feedback is appreciated, negative or positive. That's what I'm trying to get at here. Basically, ESPN, Slam Magazine, since it's almost a week now until the beginning of the NBA season, they are all releasing their top however many players list. I think ESPN did it up to like 200, 300, 500, 900, whatever. They're ranking like every player in the league. Slam Magazine's been doing it for a while as well. And it's something that they do seemingly every year. It just sparks, debate. It sparks controversy. It sparks discussion. And I think that's what it's supposed to be. I think ultimately it is just something to get us all excited to see these guys in action, since it's been so long. And by so long, I mean June. So really, it hasn't been that long. But what I'm going to do is basically give you guys my top 10 players in the league. And that's exactly what it's going to be. I should just make that a strong statement right off the bat. This is my top 10 players. This is mine, Tim's, TKO's top 10 players in the league. And that's on my criteria. It's not based on anything but what I watch and the stats that I gather. So if you disagree then and call me stupid, then one, you're entitled to your opinion. Two, I don't understand how my opinion can be stupid. You can call me misinformed. That's, I guess, uneducated. Both of those are solid criticisms. But I think I'm going to back up all my points with facts and with strong opinions. So let's get started here with number 10. First of all, just some guys that I left off. I'm not going to let you guys know all the guys that I left off, because then, it kind of spells out my list pretty clearly. But there are a lot of guys that I wanted to put on here that just couldn't quite. It's a top 10. It's not like, when someone wins an Oscar, they go up there and says, "Oh, and the Oscar goes to George Clooney, but man, Matt Damon, you killed it too. So you should hold your head up and be proud of that performance." I mean, there's plenty of guys I can do that with, but it's a top 10 list. I can't put 17 guys on here as much as I'd like to. It would be a lot easier that way, but there's only 10 guys that I can choose from, and that's what I'm going to do. So that's enough. This is like a 3-minute intro for this, so let's get started. Number 10, I have Carmelo Anthony, the leading scorer in the league last year, 28.7 points per game, 6.9 rebounds, 2.6 assists, which I believe was tied for a career low. He definitely needs to step that up, especially this year with, they're going to pretty much surround him with shooters with Metta World Peace, Andrea Bargnani, Amon Shumpert, Raymond Felton. These guys can all knock down threes, so he's probably going to have to move that number up if he wants to move up on my list, and I know that's very important to him. He shot 37% from three, which is a good percentage as well. Very efficient for him. And basically, he led his team to the second spot in the East. And that's a big thing, is when you can be the leader of a team with just on the court. You're not necessarily in the locker room. I don't think that necessarily means a whole lot on this list, especially. But if you are the guy that is going to command the most defensive attention, if you're going to be the guy that coaches have to scheme and game plan for the most, and you still perform and you still carry your team to great success, that means a lot to me and in these rankings. So Carmelo Anthony is number 10. I think he is a guy that could probably be higher on the list. It depends on what you personally, hold stock in. If you're someone that is going to value scoring and your list is just going to be the top scorers in the league, then obviously Melo's going to be a lot higher. He's a big name. He gets paid a lot of money, but I don't think he's an elite player. I think he's an elite player. That's why he's in the top 10, but he's not in in the LeBron Durant class. I think he's a tier below, and I think that's good. I think that's enough for him to advance in the playoffs. I think if he were to get the right matchups, he could make it further in the playoffs. I just think Carmelo's a guy that always has, I think, been a product of the team he's been on. The best team he's ever been on was the team that was most successful, and that was the team that got to the Western Conference Finals with Chauncey Billups, who was still, towards the tail end of his prime. You had Ty Lawson, who was, young, but still a quality backup at that point. You had Nene, you had Al Harrington, you had J.R. Smith, you had Aaron Aflalo. I mean, that was a very strong Nuggets team, and that, on any given year, that Nuggets team probably could have made it to the finals and potentially could have won a championship, but, the cards didn't fall that way, and Kobe and the Lakers were just better that year. So, he's now on a Knicks team that I think right now he's on one of the better teams he's been on, with Tyson Chandler anchoring the defense with shooters surrounding him. But the problem is, I just think the top three teams in the East are just bad matchups for him. I think, the Heat, the Pacers, and the Bulls all have, the right recipes to beat Carmelo. And I think that also holds him back from, being a better player in people's eyes, and from being a guy that we consider, an elite championship level player. If he can get that, then that would be great for him, especially because this is kind of a contract year for him. He's going to opt out of his contract this year, and if he's ever had motivation to, take his game to the next level, a la LeBron after the Mavericks series, a la, Kobe when Shaq arrived. When you have an opportunity to win and you just step up your game that much more, I don't know how much more Melo can do other than maybe, putting those assist numbers up, focusing on defense a little bit more. He could be in that, 1, 2, or, I don't think he'd be number 1, but in that 3, 4, 5 range with some of these other guys that I have on here. Also, it should be noted that Carmelo Anthony has the 4th best PER in the league last year. And for those that don't know what PER is, it's a stat developed by John Hollinger, formerly of ESPN. He actually got hired by the Memphis Grizzlies as their GM now, or assistant GM, or something along those lines. So he's very very respected in the game, and he came up with a stat that it's based on value for players' accomplishments. It's, all the good things, and, those things are taken into consideration, and then it is subtracted by the negative things: missed shots, turnovers, fouls, etc., bad shots. And it's also based per minute, so that way you can compare guys that only play, 18 minutes a game to someone that plays 38. And it also is pace adjusted. So a team like Memphis or Detroit, it doesn't play a very fast pace, therefore they don't get as many possessions as a team like the Rockets or the Warriors or the Nuggets. So it's just an evaluation of all things that players do, essentially, and that's why I really like the statistic. And Carmelo was number 4, so with that number you can make a case he should be higher, but he's number 10 on my list. Number 9 is going to spark some controversy. I believe he was top 10 ranked in the ESPN rankings. And kudos to them, because I think this is kind of an unpopular opinion, and that's Marc Gasol. He comes in at number 9 for me. Marc Gasol is one of my favorite players in the league, so if you want to call me biased, that's fine. His stats aren't anything that you're like, wow. But 14.1 points per game, 7.8 rebounds, 4.0 assists. He's a very good passer for a big man. 1.7 blocks. So as a center and someone that is former All-Star, someone that has sort of established himself now as one of the best centers in the league, or arguably the best center, you think his stats would stand out a little bit more. But I think when you look at some of the more advanced stats, when you look at the the defensive rating that Basketball Reference has, where it measures your defense, essentially, to simplify it, Marc Gasol is 5th in the league in defensive rating at 98.5. Just in comparison, Dwight Howard, who he's constantly compared to, is at 100.1. So it goes up, not down. So, you want a lower number. And so Marc Gasol is, almost 2 full points ahead of Dwight Howard, who he's always compared to in the best center battle. In defensive win shares, which is also, to simplify it, it's basing your team's wins on your defense. So how many wins is your defense worth? It's Marc Gasol's is at 5.4. Dwight Howard's is at 4.8. So once again, Marc Gasol wins in that category. Just in win shares in total, Marc Gasol is at 11.5, which is 6th in the league. Compared to Dwight Howard, not even in the top 20. Carmelo Anthony, who I just listed, 14 with 9.5. So Marc Gasol alone, according to this statistic, is worth 11.5 wins. That's insane. That's an insane number. Look at some of the other numbers to back up the case for Marc Gasol. His plus minus, which means how many points his team scored or allowed, depending on him being on the floor. So obviously, the minus would be how many points they allow, how many, plus would be how many they score. He's 14th in the league with 427 plus minus. Just as a comparison, LeBron James is number 1 with 720. So pretty big difference, but I think that's more indicative of LeBron James than Marc Gasol. But still, 14th in the league compared to Dwight Howard, who I'd have to do some scrolling to find, is at 138. So that's a huge difference, especially when you think of last year. And this is another qualm that people are going to have with these rankings, as someone's car alarm goes off in my background, which is just great radio. Okay, that's gone. It's like, oh, you're only looking at last year. Yeah, no kidding. Like, why should I look at someone's entire career? If I'm looking at someone's entire career, then Kobe would be 1, or Tim Duncan would be 1, Kobe would be 2, Steve Nash is, probably in the top 10. But no, this is 2012-13, because that's what the season just happened. Those are the numbers that we're going off of. This is the most recent illustration of these guys' skills. This is the form of each player that we're going to get for the most part. Yeah, sure, some guys were gone due to injury. Derrick Rose, Kevin Love, etc. Dwight Howard, you could argue, was not the same guy last year because of the back surgery or the knee problems, whatever. But I think that's a good case against him. Why am I going to put someone in the top 10 that's, can't jump like Dwight Howard? So, I'm obviously exaggerating, but the Dwight Howard we saw last year is not the Dwight Howard we've seen in past years. Not even close. If you look at the numbers, they look similar, but just watch the games. I mean, it's not close. The guy that jumped out of the gym and was blocking shots and dunking, he's not there anymore. And that Dwight Howard was an MVP candidate and a top 5 player. The most recent iteration of Dwight Howard was not. So, yes, Dwight Howard is not on my top 10 list. And he is more than welcome to prove me wrong, and I hope he does, because nobody likes watching Dwight Howard more than me. But right now, Marc Gasol is the best center in the league, and the best, one of the best defensive players in the league, which is why he won Defensive Player of the Year, and which is why he's on my list at number 9. Staying in the category of defense, actually, you know what? I'm going to talk about Marc Gasol a little bit more. Like I said, he's one of my favorite players, and I think this is a good point to be made about him. It's a point that I made a bunch of times, and if you're close with me or have ever talked to me about this, then you've heard this a bunch of times. And that's really only like 2 people, so I guess I shouldn't have even mentioned that. But Marc Gasol is the perfect guy that stats can't capture what they truly do. Someone like James Harden, someone like LeBron, these guys are pretty well illustrated with their stats. Their stats stand out. I'm not saying that they're like stat stuffers or they only play for stats or anything, but I think when you look at them, you can see how good they are and how many different ways they're good. Marc Gasol, it's all contextual. You need to see this guy to understand his game, I think. His stats don't illustrate what he does. You look at 7.8 rebounds for like a 7-footer, and you think that's subpar, when in reality, he is helping his teammates get in position to succeed. He's helping Zach Randolph, one of the best, small rebounds, a dude that can like barely jump over a phone book, be one of the most elite rebounders in the league, and Marc Gasol helps him get in those positions by boxing guys out, by taking dudes out of the lane with his jump shots. That leaves Randolph open to the basket. It's all set up in scheme. If Marc Gasol was in, if he was in the Rockets scheme, for instance, he'd probably average 15 rebounds a game because of how much they shoot, because how many offensive rebounds would be had, the kind of players that they have around him in terms of nobody really being an in-paint kind of player other than maybe James Harden. That's why Omar Sheik put up huge numbers. It's all dependent on surroundings, and it's like 4.0 assists doesn't make it seem like he's a great passer, but he's also the guy that will make the pass to the pass, like the hockey assist type of idea, where he'll kick out to Mike Conley, who will make the easy pass to Quincy Pondexter for a 3 or for whoever. He puts guys in positions to succeed. He's not necessarily, Rudy Gay's dribble driving down the floor. He kicks to Marc Gasol, who automatically finds a corner shooter. There's usually 1 or 2 more passes involved. But Marc Gasol is the guy that initiates it. Same with the blocks. He's not gonna necessarily get the Larry Sanders type of thing, where it's just Larry Sanders is another guy. I love him, real big fan of watching him. Think he's an elite defensive player, but the reason he gets so many blocks is that Ersan Ilyasova is beyond the 3-point line and is about 6'8", 6'9" to be kind. Marc Gasol is dealing with a bunch of long, lanky defenders, and Mike Conley, Tony Allen, Quincy Pondexter, Tayshaun Prince. These guys can all body guys, and you're not taking as many blockable shots when those guys are on you. While Milwaukee, for instance, just had no defenders last year, and everybody's getting by, and that's a lot more opportunities for Larry Sanders to meet guys at the basket. Marc Gasol doesn't have those kind of opportunities, therefore that's why his block numbers aren't as great, but they're still good. He still has the 17th best block percentage in the league. So, that is my case for Marc Gasol. Moving on, Paul George is number 8, in my opinion. I almost put Steph Curry here, and the thing is, it's funny because, either Steph Curry was going to be 8 or he was going to be not on the list. Or he was going to be 11 or 12, which is insane to think about, but it's more of a case of what do you personally value. It's like Steph Curry is the ultimate offensive player, while Paul George is a very good offensive player, but an elite defensive player. Let's look at his stats. 17.4 points per game, 7.6 rebounds, which is very good for a small forward shooting guard, and 4.1 assists, also very solid for that position. But if you look at the advanced stats, defensive rating is a 97.1. That's 3rd in the league. That's ahead of guys like Tony Allen, Marc Gasol, Larry Sanders, Joakim Noah, Kevin Garnett. Also, his defensive win shares is number 1 in the league at 6.3. Ahead of Marc Gasol, Tim Duncan, LeBron James, Joakim Noah. Defensive rating, 97.1. I mentioned that already. So, if you look at his win shares in total, he doesn't even crack the top. He's number 20. Number 20 in the league, which is still very good. Steph Curry, on the other hand, is 7. But it's an 11.2 to 9. So, while Steph Curry has more win shares, and his offensive win shares are off the charts with 8.4, I'm a guy that I think defense wins in the regular season, and I think defense wins championships. As we saw, Golden State put up a hell of a fight against the Spurs. Hell of a fight. Probably, you could make a case they should have won that series, whatever that means. Paul George came in and leading his team, almost got to the NBA Finals. So the Spurs, or the Warriors, almost got out of the second round. The Pacers almost got to the NBA Finals. Came within possessions of doing so. Yeah, a lot of it had to do with Roy Hibbert. David West played well. George Hill played well. Lance Stevenson played okay at times. But Paul George was really the catalyst of that team. He led that team. He led it in scoring. He led it in sticking the best player on earth and doing it fairly well. Also sticking Dwayne Wade at times. He's probably the best wing defender in the league, not named LeBron James. And you can make a case he's better because of his body size, like his body type. To where he's a little, I don't know if he's a little bit longer, but it seems like he is. And he's got a height to where he's more, I think, lower to the ground. I don't know his exact height compared to LeBron's. I should look that up. But it seems like he's more adept to defend smaller players than LeBron in terms of shooting guards. I think LeBron's better at defending threes and point guards. I don't know why, but it seems like Paul George is a better shooting guard defender. This is all like just my eye test, so take it for a grain of salt. But I think Paul George, his defense, and his improving offensive game. I mean, I've talked a lot about his defense. His offensive game is ever improving. He's he's super athlete. Dunks, some of the best dunks you'll see in the league. Good 3-point shooter. His mid-range game is getting there, and it's very solid. But he is sort of the linchpin of what I think is going to be the best team in the Eastern Conference this year, and he is number 8 on my list, ahead of such players as Dwight Howard, Carmelo Anthony, etc. So Kobe Bryant is number 7 on the list, and it's funny that after I just went on a huge rant about defense being underappreciated, guys whose stats don't illustrate them, guys that are a side of the ball that doesn't get as much love, I put Kobe Bryant number 7, who was an absolute joke on defense last season. Abysmal. And the Lakers were, I think, 23rd overall in defense. I'm pulling that number just completely out of nowhere, out of memory. I don't have those numbers in front of me. But anyone that watched that team doesn't need convincing that their defense was terrible. And he was a big contributing factor at that. I mean, Earl Clark played solid. Dwight was a decent anchor. Pau Gasol's never been great defensively, but he puts himself in okay positions. He's not a liability. Steve Nash and Kobe Bryant were the liabilities. Kobe couldn't stick guys. Just got guys blown past him, and I think that did contribute to Dwight being less than awesome. It should be noted, since I went on my anti-Dwight case earlier. But what Kobe did offensively and what Kobe did competitively can't be ignored. because he had a terrible coach in Mike D'Antoni who just had no idea what to do with this roster. Just had no idea what to do with this personnel. Didn't put them in any advantageous positions. Had this team in a offensive mentality with, parts that did not fit. A ball stopper in Dwight, a ball stopper in Pau Gasol, a ball stopper in Steve Nash, a ball stopper in Kobe Bryant, and then subpar role players in Jody Meeks, Jordan Hill, who I actually like, probably isn't subpar, but definitely not much better than mediocre. Antoine Jameson, he fits in the subpar category. Robert Sacre. These are the guys the Lakers were trotting out, and these are the guys that Kobe had to put up with. And he still went out there and had one of his better statistical seasons, and just watching him willed that Lakers team to a 7 seed. That team had no business being a 7 seed. That team was a joke defensively. Pau Gasol is just mentally shot, and it's a shame because I love watching Pau Gasol. When he's on, if you watch him in the Olympics, it's like watching a different guy. Just escaped from the NBA world, from LA, from Kobe, from D'Antoni, from that whole world. Where he can play freely, where he can play his natural position of center, where guys can be put in positions around him, instead of just being like the tag-along, the butt of the jokes, the blame. But anyway, this isn't about Pau Gasol. It's about Kobe Bryant. 27.3 points per game, which I believe was third in the league in scoring. 5.6 rebounds, 6.0 assists, which ties her career high, and had tied for 9th best PER in basketball. 23.1. If you watched any Lakers games, you realize that the only reason that they were in half the games they were in was because of Kobe Bryant. Offensive win shares for him was 7th in the league at 8.4, ahead of guys like Russell Westbrook, Carmelo Anthony, Tony Parker, Blake Griffin, Dwayne Wade. He was an all-star, obviously. He's been an all-star every year, seemingly. He's been in the league. He tore his Achilles at the end of the year, which, it's a big question mark, and we don't know when he's going to come back. And there's a theme here in these rankings to where guys that are question marks for this year, injury-wise, don't make appearances. I can't leave Kobe Bryant off the list in total, just for fear that he might come to my house, challenge me to a game on one-on-one, win 21-0. 22-0 if that were possible, and remind me how good he is, even with a bum Achilles. So, in summary, Kobe Bryant is still an elite offensive player. His post-game is excellent. Probably one of the best guard post-games you're going to see in NBA history. He's probably the second best shooting guard in NBA history behind Michael Jordan. Top 10 player of all time. I couldn't leave him out of the top 10. I couldn't replace him with guys that just haven't either gotten to the playoffs like Kyrie Irving, haven't got out of the the second round like Steph Curry. There's a pedigree there, and that definitely weighs on you. And even though he's a joke defensively, so is Steph Curry, so are Kyrie Irving. So I'd rather take the guy that I think genuinely led his team out of a complete disaster to at least a 7 seed. So, applause to Kobe Bryant. You're still one of the top 10 players in the league. Hope you get back soon. Tim Duncan is number 6, staying with the old man theme. And what Tim Duncan does, similar to Marc Gasol, his stats are better than Marc Gasol, but he's another guy that I just don't think it all shows in the stats. His PER, 6th in the league at 24.45, ahead of guys like Dwayne Wade, Russell Westbrook, Tony Parker, Kobe Bryant, James Harden, Blake Griffin, Kyrie Irving, Steph Curry. Tim Duncan had a better PER than all those guys. At however many years, 36, 34, however old he is, very old for NBA years. 17.8 points per game, 9.9 rebounds, 2.7 assists, and 2.7 blocks per game. He had a 459 plus minus. And let's look at some of the advanced stats. Defensive win shares. He was number 4 with 4.9. He was number 1 in defensive rating at 95. Ahead of LeBron, Hibbert, George, Tony Allen, Marcus Gasol, Larry Sanders, Joakim Noah, KG. Defensive rating wise, he was the best in the league. And that's only playing, however many minutes. I'm gonna look at this. I'm gonna look at his minutes last year. Minutes per game was 28.2, a career low, and he's still putting up these kind of numbers. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. He led his team, along with Tony Parker, to the second best record in the West and was literally millimeters from winning his 5th NBA championship. I believe. Or was it 4th? I think it's 5th. Tim Duncan, if anyone argues he's done or a shell of his former self, just doesn't know what they're talking about. And he's number 6 on my list. His tag team partner, so to speak, Tony Parker, at number 5. 20.3 points per game, 3.0 rebounds, 7.6 assists per game, which was his career high was 7.7. So he's 0.10 or 0.1 assists per game behind his career high. And as I mentioned, 23.1 PER. Which was tied for 9th with Kobe. And let's look at the advanced stats, which I really enjoy, which is why I keep bringing him up. Win shares, he was 16th in the league at 9.3. His offensive rating was 16th in the league. And his offensive win shares were 10th in the league at 7.1. Ahead of Dwayne Wade, Blake Griffin, Chris Bosh, etc. His usage percentage was 14th in the league at 27.7, which I don't know if I've used this stat yet, the usage percentage, but that's basically, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but it's the percentage of plays where you're used heavily, that you're heavily involved, I don't know exactly the definition. I don't necessarily think you have to have a statistic usage-wise. Like, you don't have to have an assist, a rebound, points, steals, whatever, to be involved in the play. I don't know exactly how you measure it, but these guys are good. They know what they're doing. Usage percentage. It's very, very indicative of just how many plays go through a certain player, how much teams use a certain player. Guys that I've already mentioned with the high usage percentage, Carmelo Anthony, 35.6. He's number 1 in the league in usage percentage, meaning his team goes to him the most. And if you look at his numbers, considering how many coaches, the coaches that are in the Eastern Conference have to game plan for this guy, and he still has that high of a usage percentage with the numbers he has. You pair those two together, and it's pretty crazy. Kobe Bryant was number 3 at his age, 31.1 or 31.9 usage percentage. in Tim Duncan, 12th in the league. He only played 28 minutes a game, and he still has the 12th highest usage percentage. So, needless to say, Tony Parker is an elite point guard, and he, along with Duncan, led his team to, like I said, just the closest you can come without actually winning the NBA title. That team was a fantastic team, just efficiently scoring the basketball, defensively. It was, I think it'll go down as one of the best teams to ever not win a championship, along with that Kings team with Chris Webber and Mike Bibby that never won. A few of those Knicks teams with Patrick Ewing that never got by Jordan. A few of those. What was the other? A few of those. What was the other team that Jordan never, they could never get by Jordan? Some of those other teams that could never get by Jordan that I can't think of. The Sean Kemp, Gary Payton, Sonics were very good. The Charles Barkley, Phoenix Suns were very good. The teams that never won it, the Utah Jazz is who I was thinking of, with Carmelo and John Stockton. Probably the best indication of the best team to never win. I think the Spurs team will go down just with the incredible shooting they had, the great bench, how many guys they could just get a spark from when they needed it, the defensive ability of Thiago Splitter anchoring the middle along with Tim Duncan, great perimeter defenders in Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green, and then Tony Parker just orchestrating it all, being the leading scorer, being the go-to guy when they needed a bucket, making an unbelievable shot in Game 1 to win the game over LeBron. I mean, he was in heavy consideration for the MVP race. I think he finished top 5 in MVP voting. And just even, I think he's 30 at this point, 31. He's at his peak, and I think he's an elite player. That's why I have him number 5. You can't, you could make a case, what are you talking about? Kyrie Irving's better, Russell Westbrook are better. Russell Westbrook, another guy that you won't see on this list. These guys are so much more athletic. They do so much more for their teams. I would argue differently. I would argue if you look at the numbers, you look at which team got farther, I think you just look at Tony Parker and you see, would the Spurs be the same if they had Russell Westbrook? No. The team can't mesh with someone like Russell Westbrook. The team can't mesh with someone like Derrick Rose, Kyrie Irving. You need someone, an unselfish, not a facilitator, but someone that can definitely make great plays with great court vision, that's willing to score, but it's not his first priority. A great chemistry guy, a great glue guy, just everything you would want in a point guard, Tony Parker has. And that's why I think he's the second best point guard in the league right now. The first best point guard, he's still on this list. But number 4 is James Harden. Crazy to think that Oklahoma City could have potentially had James Harden, Russell Westbrook, and Kevin Durant for, 5 more years, and they chose Serge Ibaka. I still think that is one of the worst moves in NBA history. Not that Serge Ibaka is bad. I still think there's a way that they could have organized that to where they could have amnestied Perkins, had Serge Ibaka take a bit of a pay cut, got cheaper pieces around them, maybe trade Thabo Cephalosha for a cheaper piece. There was a way to get those 4 guys together, to keep Ibaka, Harden, Westbrook, and Durant. But I just don't think they did it, and Harden wanted to be the guy, and he is now. 25.9 points per game, 4.9 rebounds, 5.8 assists, 1.8 steals. And what a crazy statistic to me, 10.2 free throw attempts per game, which is a league high. The most efficient way to score in the NBA is to get to the line and three-point shooting. And James Harden does both very well. Nobody goes, maybe Kyrie Irving is the only other guy that can just cross you up, just dribble away and pull up from three and just nail a three right in your face. Like James Harden. The Rockets went from 34 to 45 wins when he jumped on board. To be fair, they also added Omer Sheik, who was very good, Jeremy Lin, who wasn't that good. So I think a big part of it had to do with James Harden. Look at some of the numbers. In terms of win shares, he was 4th in the league at 12.8. Offensive win shares, he was 4th with 9.8. Offensive rating, he was, well, surprisingly not in the top 20. But I think that's more oh, yes, he is. He's number 17 with 116. It's more of the case of, he'll take some bad shots. He was really, like, him and Chandler Parsons were the only guys that really scored on that team. You had shooters surrounding him with Francisco Garcia and Patrick Beverly and some of these other guys. But really, it was just James Harden with the ball in his hands. And if none of those three-point shooters couldn't get open, or they couldn't lob it up to Omer Sheik, or Omer Sheik getting a putback or getting a tip in, it was all Harden. And that's why he had the 9th highest usage percentage in the league at 29.0. He was such a big part of that offense. He did so much for them. And now with Dwight Howard on that team, and I think Kevin McHale getting a little more of a feel of how to use him and use the pieces, I think he's got room to grow. He's got room to get up higher on this list. But the reason he isn't is, I think, strictly due to defense. Just a really bad defensive player. Just put no effort into defense last year. None whatsoever. So that's something that probably should change, or that's something that he's going to have to work on if he wants to be, the best player in the league. But he's certainly close. He is certainly getting up there. And I think, you look at the statistical jump. Yeah, it has a lot to do with his minutes increasing, with him playing, 40 minutes a game as opposed to, 29, 32, whatever. Him being the go-to guy. But it's that's what happens. But if you just watch him leading his team to the playoffs, and it wasn't an awesome team. Like, we remember it as a good team, an exciting team. It wasn't great. Realistically, like I said, their offense was limited to, if they didn't get a three or James Harden drive, free throw, layup, they were struggling. Omer Sheik is not a good offensive big man. Their power forward position was lacking all season. It's going to be lacking this season. Chandler Parsons isn't great off the dribble. Jeremy Lin struggled all year. So he's going to be relied on a lot. But like I said, I think Kevin McHale understands how to use these pieces now a little bit more. And he's going to put them in position to succeed, which I think is going to help James Harden take some of the load off him, and he can take some better shots, some more efficient shots, and can continue to improve. Number 3 is Chris Paul, 16.9 points per game, 3.7 rebounds, 9.7 assists, 2.4 steals. The third best PER in basketball at 26.43. Just the ultimate point guard, defensively, offensively, setting guys up for dunks, putting guys into the right defensive positions. Also, just being a complete floor general. Understanding, Blake, you go over here, you set the pick, DeAndre, Matt Barnes, you go, you're on this guy. No, I'll switch on it. Like, you watch him, he's always talking, he's always getting guys involved, he's always, laying out the strategy for these guys, and it's a fairly young team, that Clippers team. DeAndre, Blake, you had some older pieces with Chauncey Billups and Jamal Crawford, which is another thing. I mean, you had some knuckleheads on this team. You had Jamal Crawford, you had Willie Green was on this team, DeAndre's kind of a knucklehead, and he still was able to move them around and put them together. Lamar Odom had an NBA career when Chris Paul was his point guard, so there's that also. And he had Vinny Del Negro, who was just completely incompetent when it came to coaching, and got fired because of it, even though he coached the third best team in the West, record-wise, last year. He just said, yeah, Chris, you do it. You got this. I'm going to sit here and collect the check. You got this. So just for that alone, I think Chris Paul should be given high merits. But like I said, he led the best, or the third best team in the West, a team that I think will be the best in the West this year. Yeah, a lot of that has to do with Jared Dudley and J.J. Redick, but who makes that whole show go? It's going to be Chris Paul with an assist from Doc Rivers. See what I did there? Kevin Durant is number 2. No surprise here. 28.1 points per game, 7.9 rebounds, 4.6 assists, which is a pretty big jump from where he had the year before, which was at 3.5. 28.35 PER, and his plus minus is ridiculous. It's 717. That means his team is 717 points better over the course of a season when he's on the floor. Yeah, we know he's really good, but that's crazy. He had the 6th highest usage percentage in the league last year, 29.8. His offensive win shares is just a hair below number 1. He's at number 2 at 13.6. By the way, offensive win shares, Chris Paul, 10.6. Usage percentage, Chris Paul's not even on this list. But that's just a good indication of how he gets other guys involved, I think. I'm going to spin that. But Chris Paul did have the 2nd best offensive rating at 127. Behind Tyson Chandler at number 1. Interesting. Kevin Durant was number 5 in the offensive rating at 122.2. Offensive win shares, he was 2nd, I mentioned already. And in win shares total, he's just a hair behind number 1 at 18.9. The best scorer in the league, even though he didn't win the scoring title. He could have potentially, but he sat out, I believe, the last game or 2. Could have caught Carmelo. Didn't chose to let it go. Chose to focus on bigger avenues, and that was championships. And if Russell Westbrook hadn't got hurt, who knows? Who knows what would have happened? I think they would have lost to San Antonio still. I think that was a team of destiny. But team on a mission. And I think they matched up well with OKC. But, this guy I think is no doubt the 2nd best player in the league. His defense is improving every year. When he's able to, fully flesh out that long, lanky frame and turn it into I don't want to say someone like LeBron or Paul George, because I think those guys, like I said, are the 2 best wing defenders in the league. If he can get it to, top 10 status and just know, where to go, where to stick those limbs in front of guys at all times, he's just going to be unstoppable. I think OKC, I don't think Scott Brooks is that good a coach. I'll be honest. I really don't. And I think he would be really well served as like a stretch 4 with Ibaka at the 5, Westbrook and Cephalosha out there, along with maybe, Jeremy Lamb or Kevin Martin or whoever's playing that like sort of shooter role. And I think that's your crunch time lineup. And I think Durant would really succeed because he's big enough to guard some of these power forwards. He's big enough to guard Blake Griffin. He's just not strong enough at this point. And when he gains some of that strength, he's just going to be that much better. And I think that could come with age. That could just come with, maybe he actually can't just physically get stronger, or bigger, I should say, but he is getting stronger. Once he gets that sort of man strength, in his late 20s, early 30s, when he's in his real physical prime, he's going to be unstoppable. He is going to be probably at some point the best player in the league, and I think a lot of it has to do with number one leaving the league. That's not going to happen for a long time, and thank God. I hope he stays with the Miami Heat. LeBron James, the number one, obviously. 2-time defending NBA champion, 2-time defending MVP. Well, 5-time MVP, but he's won it 2 years in a row now. 26.8 points per game, 8.0 rebounds, 7.3 assists. The league high PER of 31.67, 720 plus minus. Ridiculous. You look at the advanced stats, his defensive rating is 10th in the league at 4.7. Offensive win shares, number 1 at 14.6. His defensive rating is... I can't find it. Alright, let's move on. His win shares are the highest at 19.3. His offensive rating is 3rd, 124.6. His usage percentage is at 5 at 30.2. I mean, what is there really to say at this point that I haven't already said? I've already said he's the best wing defender in the league. He's the most unstoppable 2-basket driver in the league. He shot 40% from 3 this year. He didn't take a whole lot, but he took enough to where that's an impressive stat. That's going to improve. It looks like he's continued to use his shot. His post game is getting better. His mid-range game is getting better. And at this point, he's locked in mentally. You're not afraid to give this guy the ball in a crunch time situation. You're not worried about Dwayne Wade having to be the closer. You're not worried about Dwayne Wade and how they're going to work chemistry-wise, because he's the ultimate chemistry guy. Everyone wants to play with LeBron James. If you poll the NBA, who's the guy you'd most want to play with? Guarantee LeBron James wins. Because he's going to get you the ball. He's going to kick it out to you if you're a shooter. He's going to throw it up to you to throw it down with an alley-oop. And he's going to make your team win. He's now a winner. He's a 2-time champ, and he's going to look to continue that, and he could go down as one of the best of all time if he's not one of those already. No one can argue that he's not number one at this point, and haters keep hating. So I guess I should quickly mention the guys I left off. I already mentioned Dwight. I already mentioned Russell Westbrook. I mentioned Kyrie Irving. I mentioned Steph Curry. Those were all the guys that were the closest to making it. Blake Griffin, just outside, I think, probably a top 15 player. He's someone that I think can really improve now with Doc Rivers being in the mix, and he could make the jump to a top 10 guy. I think he's almost underrated now because so many people call him overrated. His post game is, I think it's really good. I think he can turn around and hit that jump hook. That mid-range jumper is getting there. You can see real improvement. I think the next step is defensively. I think the next step is knowing how to jump up and block shots like he would with a dunk. Like using that athleticism on the defensive end. Putting yourself in better positions. Rebounding a little bit more. Boxing out a little bit more. Not being afraid to get physical with guys because he's such a physical specimen at such a young age. I think he's only 24. I mean, it's the sky's the limit for Blake Griffin. Dwayne Wade, obviously, is some guy that's been like a perennial top 10 player for so many years. My favorite player of all time. So, I wanted to put him up there. Problem with Dwayne, one, it's injuries. Two, it's just inconsistency. especially last year. Like, he was just gone one day, back another. Every other week, it seemed like, oh, Flash is back, and then you would just disappear. I haven't looked at his numbers. I don't know what they compare with the rest of his career. I'm going to look at it right now. Points per game, he was 21.2, which was his career low other than his rookie year. His usage percentage, that's what I do when I'm looking up a stat. He was 29.5, so it's still pretty high. He's still a big part of what that team does on offense, which is why he needs to be better, which is why he needs to be... he doesn't even need to be the Dwayne Wade of old. I think he needs to average like 24 points per game, 23 maybe. You know, be a solid defender like he's always been. Be a guy that can, you know, get LeBron or whoever else the ball, not being afraid to pass up his shot to get a better shot for somebody else. You know, a Chalmers, Norris Cole, corner 3, a Battier 3, whatever. And be the leader on the team that it needs. And these are all kind of peripheral things and things that, you know, maybe don't lend you to be a top 10 player. But if he just sort of takes his role and owns it and, you know, takes that second banana to another level, because he is. I mean, there's no doubt this is LeBron's team at this point. He just needs to be that second guy. He needs to be the Scottie Pippen and do it very well. Really, he needs to stay healthy, which is really up to Eric Spoelstra. So we'll see how that goes. But I don't know if Dwayne is capable of getting back to being a top 10 player. Like, maybe the injuries have just slowed him down. Maybe it's just age. Maybe it's the way they're using him. But he's still really fun to watch. He's still, you know, my favorite player in the league. And I hope he gets back to being 100%. Steph Curry, like I said, I really wanted to put him in the 8th spot, and then the last minute I changed it to Paul George. Just one of the most elite offensive players in the league. You know, probably the best shooter in the league. Can make great passes. Still turns the ball over a fair amount. Still isn't very good offensively, very good defensively. Kind of a joke defensively. But still room for improvement. It was kind of his first like real healthy season without Monta Ellis, which I think was a serious detriment to him. Now they've got a stable locker room, a good coach, good guys surrounding him to complement his skills. So this is going to be a big year for Steph Curry, and it wouldn't surprise me if he got into some MVP discussion. But right now, like I said, I favor the defense of Paul George more so than the offense of Steph Curry. But it's more fan friendly certainly for Steph Curry, which is why he will probably be the guy that gets the most people arguing the case for him being in the top 10 the most. Him and Russell Westbrook, who, you know, numbers-wise, if he were on any other team, he'd easily be a top 10 player. But my problem is that he's on a team with Kevin Durant. And I just talked about all the reasons why Kevin Durant's so good. Russell Westbrook had the second highest usage percentage in the league last year. Behind Carmelo, in front of Kobe and Kyrie and LeBron and Kevin Durant and John Wall and James Harden. Like, there's no reason the second fiddle on a team with Kevin Durant on it should have that high a usage percentage. That being said, that team needs Russell Westbrook. We saw what it looked like without him. Got beat up by Memphis. You know, nearly lost a 3-0 lead to Houston. I think they lost one game, but that second game they were close to giving away. So Russell Westbrook needs to be on the team. I just don't think he needs to be used as much. If you limit those like long jumpers, just like cut it by a few. You know, the turnovers, not great. I'm trying to look at if he's in the top 20. Let's see. I can't find it right now, but if I were to really look it up, I'm sure I could find some numbers to back me up on the turnovers and the just the bad assists, the bad shots. If he can cut that down and just be a little more efficient, he's a very good defender, which is a good case for him over someone like Derrick Rose or Steph Curry or Kyrie Irving. Like, if they traded spots, if Kyrie Irving and Russell Westbrook switched teams, I think I'd probably have. I know I'd have Russell Westbrook on this list. But it's just the fact that he's playing with Kevin Durant, and he's got to be more. He's got to be more versatile to his, to being his backup, to being his Robin, because that's what he is. You know, Kevin Durant's is the leader on the team. The last shot of the game is going to Kevin Durant. All right, I think I've talked enough. This is well over an hour, and I don't even know how well this is going to sound because I didn't check my sound levels beforehand. And if that's the case, this will never be posted because you won't be able to hear it, and I'm sure as hell not doing this again. So, if you do listen, I hope you enjoyed, and let me know what you think. Let me know what your top 10 is below in the comments, and thanks, guys, for checking out the TKO Show here on TKOTalk.com. Later.